Hi, PerspectiveWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, August 26th. Laura has now been classified as a major hurricane, a Category 3 hurricane with maximum sustained winds as of the last report at 115 miles per hour. It intensified rapidly in the last 24 hours from a tropical storm yesterday morning at this time now to a major hurricane. It very well could become a Category 4 hurricane later on today before it makes landfall, probably around midnight or 1 a.m. Tonight around the Texas-Louisiana border region. Again, it is in an environment right now that is very favorable with low wind shear, very warm sea surface temperatures underneath it, providing lots of support. Again, Laura has now become a major hurricane, Category 3. This is the latest infrared satellite imagery loop of Laura. Very healthy looking system. It's got a rather symmetrical appearance to it, which is a sign of healthy circulation pattern, the outflow and all, again, indicative of a very healthy storm. And you can see the eye really starting to become more and more visible on satellite imagery here, headed in this general direction to the northwest, about 15 miles per hour. This is the Texas-Louisiana border right here, and it looks like this is the area for landfall, maybe midnight, 1 a.m. tonight. And again, it has reached major hurricane status. Now, there's a little bit of hope that right around the time of landfall, there'll be a little bit of an increase in vertical wind shear that could reduce its intensity slightly. Let's hope for that. But again, over the next few hours, while it's still over the open, warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, could actually climb to Category 4 hurricane status. But let's hope there's a little bit of wind shear that could reduce its intensity slightly when it makes landfall, probably around midnight or 1 a.m. into the border region of Texas and Louisiana. Well, this is the latest official position by the National Hurricane Center. A couple things I want to point out here. First of all, this little area right here, that's Galveston Bay, Houston right here. This is the Texas-Louisiana border right here. So the main impact area looks like it'll be, let's say, about Beaumont, Texas to Lake Charles, Louisiana, right in that region right there. And again, this system is moving to the north and west and should move right into this region in the middle of the night or maybe later on tonight. Now, typically, the worst damage is on the right side of a storm track, and that would be basically from this area on to this region right here. One reason for that is that the winds blow counterclockwise around hurricanes, of course, and all low pressure systems in the northern hemisphere. That would be, by the time it reaches this position right in here, the winds will be coming out of this direction here. So you have the combination of the kind of a southerly wind on the right side of the storm track, kind of combines with the forward speed of the system, and that adds a little component of extra boost to the wind speed on the right side of the storm track, and of course it also contributes to a higher storm surge on the right side of the storm track. So if this system were moving over in this area, that storm surge will be worst in the Galveston Bay area, but it looks like it'll go just to the east of there, up the coast a little bit, right in the area of the Texas-Louisiana border. Again, the prime target zone here will be, let's say, Beaumont, Texas to Lake Charles, Louisiana. It is a large storm. It'll obviously have significant impact throughout the Texas and Louisiana coastal regions. But again, landfall right around midnight, right around the Texas-Louisiana border. Well, again, a Category 3 major hurricane, Laura. What kind of winds can we expect? Worst conditions, again, from around Beaumont, Texas to Lake Charles, Louisiana. This is a large area of 100 mile per hour plus winds here when it makes landfall. Again, midnight, 1 a.m. or so, and those very strong winds will extend a little farther away into central Louisiana and down the coast of Texas a bit, as it is a large hurricane. So don't just be totally focused on where the center makes landfall. But again, we could have 100 plus mile per hour winds maybe even 120 mile per hour winds right at the coast, with a very high storm surge to worry about here, especially along the Louisiana coastline just to the right of the storm track. So this is a forecast map of the maximum wind gusts. Again, perhaps reaching Category 4 status later on today. Hopefully there'll be a little bit of a reduction in the intensity around the time of landfall, with a little increase in vertical wind shear, westerly wind shear, right at that time. Again, we're talking about landfall midnight, 1 a.m. or so. And this is the official forecast track by the National Hurricane Center. M represents major hurricane. It should be a major hurricane upon its arrival, but again, it could tend to reduce in intensity a little bit right at the time of landfall, and that is after it potentially climbs up to a Category 4 status over the next few hours. Currently in an environment that's very favorable, low wind shear, very warm sea surface temperatures underneath it, maybe a little bit of an increase in wind shear right upon the time of arrival. Then it brings some heavy rain into the south central states and curves into the eastern states over the upcoming week. And probably around Saturday there'll be a heavy, pretty significant rain event in the mid-Atlantic region. The system will kind of become intertwined with a frontal system that will be moving in from the north and west, also an upper level trough. So that combination of the remnants of Laura with a frontal system and an upper level trough dropping in from the Great Lakes region will produce some rainfall in the mid-Atlantic region. This system could actually then emerge off the mid-Atlantic coastline and start to intensify again once it gets out over the warm waters of the western Atlantic. But again, this looks like a major hurricane upon its arrival in the Texas-Louisiana border region around midnight or 1 a.m. Well, let's take a look at last night's operational run of the GFS at 6Z. This is the 500 millibar height anomaly forecast maps. A couple of the key players here. Again, we have kind of a weakening ridge of high pressure to the east and an upper level trough over southwestern Texas. As this system right here, reflection of Hurricane Laura at 500 millibars, located right here as of Wednesday morning. And by the time we get to the evening hours, you notice this upper level trough kind of hangs on, tends to kind of reassert itself into the southwestern part of Texas. That combined with the ridge to the east could produce a little bit extra wind shear right around the time of landfall, maybe westerly wind shear that could reduce its intensity slightly at the last minute. But again, that is after it perhaps climbs to Category 4 status over the next several hours, and it's likely to still be a major hurricane upon landfall time, midnight or 1 a.m. Let's keep moving forward here, and that system moves into the south central states. Then we have a vigorous upper level trough diving to the southeast across the Great Lakes over the early part of the weekend. And the combination of the remnants of Laura, this upper level trough, and a frontal system likely to result in decent rainfall, maybe even some severe thunderstorm activity in the mid-Atlantic region right around Saturday into Saturday evening. And then the remnants of Laura push off the mid-Atlantic coastline. It could actually re-intensify as it moves over the warm waters of the western Atlantic. Well, in terms of surface forecast maps, notice here 971 millibars as of early this morning. This is the Texas-Louisiana border right here. Watch what happens, 965 millibars and 961 millibars. So indeed, this particular model run at 6E last night has it continuing to intensify during the day, and that's why we fear that it could become a Category 4 major hurricane. And once it moves overland, it will weaken rapidly, but bring some very heavy rainfall right into the south central states, and of course winds as high as 120 miles per hour or so, wind gusts along the coastal region, especially along Louisiana coastal region. But the area from Beaumont, Texas to Lake Charles in the prime zone here for the landfall later on tonight, let's say midnight, 1 a.m. Then it moves northward for a while and then cuts to the east and starts to become absorbed by this incoming upper level trough and frontal system producing a decent rain event probably on Saturday in the mid-Atlantic region, maybe even some severe thunderstorm activity as well. And then it could start to intensify again once it moves out over the open waters of the western Atlantic. So we now have a major hurricane moving to the northwest, probably arriving in the border region of Texas and Louisiana later on tonight, midnight, 1 a.m. or so. It could increase in intensity enough over the next several hours to become a Category 4 major hurricane. Hopefully there'll be a little bit of a reduction in the intensity right around landfall with a bit of an increase in westerly wind shear. That's it for now. For PerspectiveWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.